Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny. Wild Card Weekend. It's no longer Super Wild Card Weekend, I learned. NFL stopped calling it that. Recap edition. As always, I am joined by my friend, fellow podcast host of the Domonique Foxworth Show, Domonique Foxworth, to recap. Well, we're going to recap all the games in a way. We're going to pick a winner and a woof from every game this weekend. Domonique, not exactly the best slate of games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so first of all, we're getting near the end of the season, so we need to cherish these last few weeks before you send me away. But I love when there's one game on at a time. So it sucked that so many of these games weren't good, but the experience where I don't feel like I have to know what happened in 15 different games.
I do.
Like I can lock in on one game and then I don't have to rewatch all these other games 15 times. Like I personally, so as much as some of these games sucked, I personally enjoyed the experience of sitting down and be like, yeah, I don't need to flick channels. I don't need to think about anything else. This is the only one that matters.
Vikings Rams, which we're going to start with, we're going to work backwards, was probably the most disappointing because it was the one I actually thought would be close. Like the first few were like, we kind of had a feeling how those would go outside of the Chargers game, which we'll get to, which was pretty weird. But it was not close. It was a blowout. So you were taking the winners in the NFC, obviously the Rams. What would you like to focus on before we get to inevitably the Sam Darnold of it all?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jared Verse is a specific winner to me. He had he's a rookie who I think was the front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year without putting up the type of stats this season that would get you a bunch of attention. So I think it was kind of an opportunity for a breakout game. He was really impactful in this game and he scored a touchdown. But I think overall that young defensive front was like that was the story of the game. And last week going into this game was like, this is where there's a matchup that if the Rams are able to win, they're going to have to dominate up front. And I mean, they did dominate up front. Some of it gets to the Sam Darnold of it, as you've mentioned also, but like the Vikings offensive line isn't terrible. They're not great, but they're not terrible. And they made them look like they were terrible, pushing linemen into his lap, winning on the edge. It just seemed like, they were outmatched, and they're also young, which is exciting.
Yeah, I was kind of fascinated by the Rams defense in this one because, going into it, as we said, we thought, okay, this 4-man rush is really good and hungry. This offensive line just came off a really bad performance against the Lions. We know Sam Darnold is a pressure-sensitive quarterback. We'll get to that. But I was not prepared for, I guess, how schemed up it all was.
Yeah.
I think that's what really struck me about this. I mean, Jared, the players make plays. Verse was fantastic. Kobe Turner was awesome. He's been awesome now for a couple of years. Obviously, he was amazing as a rookie as well. But I think like I hadn't given the Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula like a ton of thought this year. I mean, watching them, I thought, wow, they're getting better as the year goes along, and they seem to be. He seems to be getting the most out of what I think we all perceive to be a less talented defense. So I thought he deserved credit for that. But I mean, not only did they have Darnold and that Vikings offensive line in hell with some of their pressures, they seem to be all, just as a defense, to take it a little bit bigger, Dominique, they seem to be all over a lot of the Vikings core concepts. And I guess that particular matchup, like Kevin O'Connell, again, we'll get to Sam Darnold, versus Chris Shula, I did not think would go against Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, I mean, I have to assume that McVay was participating in some of this game prep since O'Connell's a McVay disciple. I'm sure that he had some understanding of the way that Kevin O'Connell wants to approach the game, which is the thing that was disappointing because I felt like Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores, that combination of coaches for offense and defense of the Vikings, have been so impressive this entire season. And they got their pants schemed off. I don't know. Like it was very clear that Sean McVay was like, all right, we're going to attack this specific area of the field. We know you guys like to blitz and drop into these zones. And the pressure was, they were getting rid of the ball quickly enough. The pressure wasn't getting there. Then they switched them into man, which slowed down the Rams a little bit, but it was kind of too late, especially since the Vikings couldn't put up any points. But yeah, I think that's what it came down to is McVay, and I shouldn't disrespect Shula like that and say that McVay was a part of all of it, but like I assume that he participated in that game planning.
No, it's a great point because Kevin O'Connell did work for Sean McVay. That offense has a lot of DNA. I think about like the Rams blitzed 9 times, and on those 9 blitzes, they got 7 pressures and 3 sacks. Sam Darnold threw for 15 yards. So they were extraordinarily effective when they sent pressure, and all the blitzes looked wildly different. But to go back to your point about McVay and that O'Connell's the tendencies, one of the blitzes was I think it was Durant, not Witherspoon, a cornerback blitz against a condensed formation. And I was like, ooh, like I've seen this get Stafford in the past because the Rams also love to run their offense out of condensed formations. And it did feel like the Rams' entire coaching staff just had a beat on. Now, some of it played into their hands, which is Jordan Rodriguez, who covers the Rams, does a great job, had an article talking about how she interviewed some of the Rams defensive players after, and they're like, yeah, we knew Sam Darnold was going to hold on to the football. Yeah. So the entire game plan was like, let's just, these pass concepts are going to take a while to develop. It's not just Sam Darnold holding on to the football. Yes. They felt like the Vikings offense was just going to take a while. So, quick pressure is not the be all end all in this game. We just need to make him question what he's saying and get time to get home. And obviously that's how it played out, Domonique.
Yeah, I mean, I was so surprised that, again, back to the Vikings coaching staff and Kevin O'Connell specifically, was like, all right, the Lions got you last week because you were doing these slow developing routes. And this is the problem, I think, with some of these like do what we do type offenses that like we like our concepts and we're going to hit our concepts, and you can't change within the course. And we saw like the defense isn't like that. The defense changed, and it wasn't drastic change, but the Vikings defense made adjustments in the course of the game to stop the bleeding. And it's not even in the course of the game that I expected something from O'Connell. Just from week to week, I guess I would anticipate. This is just like football 101, or at least NFL 101. If it beat you last week, you're going to see it until you stop it. Yeah. And so you had to know that the Rams game plan was going to be designed very similar to what the Vikings did, or even if it wasn't, you had to know that you've shown that these slow developing big chunk plays is your weakness. So I understand coming in with those plays in your game plan, but they didn't have an adjustment. It seemed like they're still running the ball. It's like, get rid of the damn ball. It's like either a screen or a deep damn dig. It's like, all right, you don't got no slants, some quick outs, something like that. I don't know.
Sam Darnold had 7 throws of quick game in this entire game that went for 6 yards total. He finished with a 3.21 time to throw, which is very long. Now, obviously, some of that is because the game got out of hand. They're trying to throw deep balls and get them in it. But in the first half, he was almost touching 3 seconds as well. They were going back and watching some of the sacks and incompletions and stuff. There were moments where Darnold was passing up checkdowns, no doubt. But I do feel like there was not nearly enough quick game baked into the structure. I'm not talking about checkdown. I mean, like,
it's designed.
Designed quick game for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison to get the ball in space. I just feel like,
because by definition, checkdowns are not fast moving. Right. You're checking them down.
It was late in the progression where he was like, he was still trying to make it up, and but there wasn't enough great
design quick. Yeah.
And again, to the Rams defensive credit, like, for example, I can't remember, they tried to screen to Jefferson, and I think it was Witherspoon who just tackled him. Yeah. So the Rams defense was phenomenal. I want to be clear, like, I'm going to preview obviously the Eagles game, but they really impressed me in this one, both in terms of the play of the players who were all excellent. Kobe Durant was unbelievable in this one, the defensive game plan. But I guess just to kind of pivot to the Woof, which is Sam Darnold, I do think all that context is important because I feel like that the scheme didn't do him any favors. However, he also has limitations as a quarterback that I think have been, exposed, or at least not exposed, re-exposed in these last 2 games, which is, he holds on to the ball too damn long sometimes. And he's not mobile enough to find rush lanes when they're there, right? There was a couple times in this game where he escaped, but there were a couple times earlier on where I think a fast quarterback would have been able to create with his legs a little bit. And this is devastating for him. Like, let's not beat around the bush to finish the season this way after there was like 3 weeks ago, I was literally part of segments on television where people were like, is $40 million on the table? Domonique, like, let's just kind of cut to it. What do you think's going to happen with Sam this offseason?
Yeah, it's off the table. I think he's gone. I think he's not staying with Minnesota. I would love to keep him in Minnesota if I were Minnesota.
Yeah.
However, you have to at least let him go hit the market, because whatever they're going to offer him, it would be like a one or 2 year deal as at backup salary money. Someone would want him as a starter. Like, I'm not paying him as a starter. And I do think of the quarterback hungry teams out there that someone might be willing to pay him starter money, especially a team with with a lot more cap room than the Vikings will have, considering what they have tied up in Justin Jefferson on the offense. And I think this is the silver lining for Vikings fans, which I'm sure they are having. This is like the guy that you just signed, Daniel Jones, who I guess is a free agent now too, and maybe you'll re-sign him to be your backup. Like, he had a really great playoff game against you guys, and that resulted in the team committing to him and then regretting it. So the thing about the small sample size is especially late in the season, it's that recency bias. It resonates. And so they have a plan, and their plan was designed around letting the expensive quarterback go, paying the future Hall of Fame receiver a lot of money, and riding this rookie contract situation. Sam Darnold was playing so well that you could blow up that plan. And I'm not sure that it's smart to blow up that plan. And now it's pretty clear there's no reason, no reason whatsoever to blow up that plan, which is it's a good place to be, honestly.
I think for the Vikings perspective, the worst case scenario would have been like if he was just okay, actually, in the postseason. You either want him to ball out, or unfortunately for him, this does give you some clarity in that regard. I think for Darnold, what's tricky here is what we have seen. I think what I feel comfortable saying about him is he's a quarterback who needs good protection, right? And ideally pairs with a good run game, which Minnesota just did not have this year. The problem is none of the teams that need quarterbacks fit into that category. I mean, I'm looking at, and this is going to be a theme, I'm going to just continuously emphasize through the playoffs, just looking at offensive lines, rankings, and metrics. The good teams are on the playoffs. Shocker. And the bad teams are the ones that need quarterbacks. And so it's like, you think about a team like the Titans, the Raiders, the Jets. He's a bad fit for those teams. The Browns maybe, but I don't think they have the money. So I don't know what's going to happen here. Yeah. There's a possibility in which he does come back on a reasonable, if there's really, I mean, like you said, probably somebody will pay him, but it might be better for him to come back on a reasonable contract, especially as McCarthy comes back from injury.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a chance that he could try to continue to build or rebuild whatever value that he's had next year. But honestly, I think that this might be as good as it gets for him, because of you can only fall on your face. Is that too mean? You can only have so many of these poor performances with high pressure moments before that becomes who you are, and people will stop giving you chances. He's been in Carolina, San Francisco, the Jets, and here. Like, he's been a few places, and each of those places you determine that he's not the guy. So yeah, I think you do. I don't know. I get your point, and you're also leaking I guess I leak it all the time, but at the beginning of every season, I only pick teams with good offensive lines. The rest of them, I don't care. You're not going to make it. And it's always how it ends up.
It really is. I mean, if you look at the final teams, the Commanders, who we're going to talk about now, are one who don't have a top 10 offensive line, but they have a quarterback who compensates for it in a lot of ways. Let's start there. Commanders, you're the winners again. By the way, we didn't talk about Matthew Stafford at all. Matthew Stafford is the worst quarterback you want to play to expose the difference between like an elite quarterback and a non-elite quarterback. That's all I have to say about him. All right, we'll talk about him at length. But the first half of that game, this is why I hate picking Rams games, by the way, because Matthew Stafford will just like do not somebody replied to me this on Blue Sky, that the worst thing you want to play is Matthew Stafford coming off of 3 bad games, because he's going to go nuclear. And that was exactly what happened here. Okay, Commanders. Speaking of good quarterbacks, but we don't have to focus on Daniels. What do you want to stress here?
I mean, it's almost impossible not to focus on Daniels, but I decided that I wanted to make Dan Quinn the winner, in part because I really want to talk about Jaden Daniels. Like what he has done for this team, and the expectations. I know when we were having the MVP conversation, we looked at like preseason win totals. Yeah, someone who you could say accounted for the largest jump is Jaden Daniels, and I think had he not had that midseason rib injury, he'd be in the conversation. He probably wouldn't win it because of the stats of these other guys, but his impact on this team was incredible. His impact in this game was impressive. There's a lot of soft, fluffy nonsense that I don't like to use as real analysis, but I don't know how else to describe
He's just a winner. He's not moxie.
He's just cool, man. It's just poised, and it's like
island out there.
Yeah, you see it and you hear people talk about it, and I think there are some quotes coming out of their locker room before the game that they expected to win. It was very different from other teams that were big underdogs that were happy to be there and kind of were like, yeah, we're gonna let it all hang out. This team was like, no, we expect to win. And Jaden, he's had, if you could watch him play without knowing who he was, I think you have a hard time saying that this kid was a rookie.
I mean, to get to the football side of it with him, I just continuously am bowled over by the things he does at such a high level that I didn't know if he could do in the NFL, and that he has gotten better at as the year goes along. In this game, the thing that really jumped out to me was his ability to throw over the middle of the field, man. Like, to buy little time. Dyami Brown was the beneficiary of a lot of that, especially with coverage tilting towards Terry McLaurin. He always he finds the right answers consistently. He's obviously very accurate, but he's able to he's just quarterbacking at a really high level. So
he has all the tools too. It's like the big thing that I've been talking about for him all year long is like the combination of his deep ball accuracy and his athleticism. Like that's a really impressive combination. And this game wasn't about him and his deep ball accuracy. I hadn't imagined in all of his games, just about the with the exception, I guess, the Bears game, all of his wins, at some point in the game, he throws an incredible go ball or two that is impossible to drop and also impossible to cover. I remember him throwing some good ones in this game, but they didn't get completed, if I remember correctly. He just found a new, like, he has all the tools, I guess. And if you and that's the thing, is where you look at this roster, there's not a bunch of help on the roster. And so I think, and I say this often about rookie quarterbacks, is the best thing you can do for them is take pressure off of them and find a player, a play, or something that takes pressure off of them, or a defense that takes pressure off of him. He doesn't have any of that. And when people take away what he wants to do, what he does really well, you find out, you know what, he does something else really well. And he gets a big stiff arm at the end of the game. And that's where some of the just a winner type of stuff comes up, because those feel like the type of plays that, like, he's not a big, strong guy.
The third down versus Kalijah Cansey is the play that I just keep coming back to.
Yeah, that's the stiff arm.
So, because, first of all, Cansey was unreal in this one. The penetration he gets is so exciting, honestly, for Bucs fans. And he had him dead to rights, man. He had him. And I was like, ooh, Cansey, big play. I was like, I'm ready to focus on him. And then he just didn't have him. And to go back to Dan Quinn, though, I heard about
downs.
I talked about those 4th downs on NFL Live, and I think to tie it together, Dan Quinn knows that Jaden Daniels is the best player on his team, and he's coaching like it. That ability to use all 4 downs is going to be a major factor for this team. It has been a major factor for this team. They converted, I think, like a near historic rate this year. They're the best 4th down team in football. And it was a big contrast between him and the other coach, who's my Woof, Todd Bowles. And I want to hone in on something here, because Dan Quinn coached his team like he knew his offense was significantly better than the defense. Todd Bowles does not, and I think that is fundamentally the problem with the Bucs. The Bucs offense was good in this one. They just had some fumbles and miscues, obviously, and the field goal that Bulls kicked to tie the game, on its face, like in a vacuum, I think is defensible, right? Mm-hmm. The reason I thought it was not defensible, when they kicked that field goal, I said to myself, oh, they're going to lose. It's over. Because his defense had been very good, but in the red zone.
Right.
Which makes sense because it's an offense that gives up a lot of space, right? And you saw that certainly. But they have an exceptional run defense. Kancey and Vay are great. So when things are compressed, they're able to actually win. Their quarterbacks aren't as much of vulnerability, whatnot. So at that point, I thought, well, of course Washington's going to drive for a field goal.
Yeah.
If they needed a touchdown, I might have been like, okay, you know what? I trust your defense to bow up again in the red zone. But to get to field goal territory? Yeah. I mean, it just, like, Domonique, did you, any part of you think that the Bucs were going to win that game when they kicked that field goal?
Absolutely not. Like, I don't know what happened to the win probability literally, but the win probability for me went to 0 because of the exact point you're making. And I think that's a point about head coaches that you have to update the variables as they change.
Self-scout.
Yeah, right. And then update it in your head, because I think that he's a defensive coach and he normally has a really good defense. And he's like, all right, this is what I do in this situation. Not, all right, this is a new situation. What should I do in this new situation given all these variables? And yeah, like, I like going for the touchdown there because, again, it leaves the opposing team in a less aggressive situation, even if you miss it with time still on the clock. And then you get another chance with your quarterback and your offense that's playing really well.
The other thing about the self-scouting and scouting your opponent and whatnot, I talked about the Bucs being better in the red zone than in the field. You're also going against a team, to go back to what we just said, that was the best fourth down team in the NFL. You're telling them you have all 4 downs. You have a quarterback that we can't bring on. All you have to do is get into field goal territory.
Can you imagine, like, if there were, like, this is what you're saying. I think sometimes framing it differently helps. And it's like saying, essentially what you're saying is, we'll play the game with 1 fewer down than you. And it doesn't seem like that, but, like, if they're going to go for it and they're good at going for it, and you are essentially saying, all right, cool, we'll play with 3 downs, you play with 4. And that's really hard to win that way, especially when your defense is a bend but don't break kind of crew.
I think when you go against especially these mobile quarterbacks, you really have to factor that in when you're decision making, when you're giving them all 4 downs.
Can I say one more thing? This is somewhat related, but I wanted to bring it up when you were talking about Sam Darnold and the offensive line. Is like, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, I don't want to take anything away from Baker, but I think that this offensive line,
they're so good.
Yeah, and that's we're talking about this Baker resurgence, and not that the Browns O-line wasn't good back in the day, but, like, Baker's gotten better too. And I would say the same thing about the Bryce Young resurgence. Is like, you know what? That offensive line is a lot better. So, like, this is really boring for us to talk about, but this is what I'm always yelling about. What I'm saying, building a team before you get the quarterback is like, whoever your quarterback is, you'll get the best version of them if you got a good O-line.
And I like to go back to the Darnold thing. If there was a team out there that was like the Bucs, they'd be a great destination. The Bucs would be a great destination for Sam Darnold. I think you do what Baker Mayfield's doing there, but Baker does throw it faster, though. He gets, he helps his offensive line.
Right. I mean, I think you're right. I would say, could he do it? Yes. Would I rather have Baker? Also, yes.
Yeah. All right. Packers, Eagles. You got the Eagles first. Yeah. Eagles vibes are not good right now, despite the win.
Yeah, I mean, I would give the Eagles defense.
Yeah.
The Nakobe Dean situation is major. That hurts, but, like, we've been talking about how good this Eagles defense is for a stretch now, and
awesome.
Sometimes, like, we all know, defense can fluctuate. The game is designed for offense to have success in a big situation like this, where their offense wasn't playing particularly well. This defense just was like, all right, cool, y'all not gonna get us no points. All right, cool, we'll stop them again. We'll turn it over. We'll stop them again. Whatever you want, we got it. And that's, like, to do that in an NFL playoff game. That to me, with a bunch of or a couple rookies playing in key roles, and injuries that you would think were formidable, they just all right. Our linebacker goes down, we'll keep it going. We haven't had Brandon Graham in a while, who's an impact player. We'll keep it going. We got young corners and nickels. All right, let's just keep shutting this offense down. It was really impressive. So I wanted to give some love to the defense.
Yeah, the Eagles defense has allowed 13 or fewer points in 3 straight games now, according to but that's the first time that they've done that since the year that they won the Super Bowl. That's from Stats and Info. I think just watching them, I mean, there's a lot to get into, but what strikes me constantly is new players are stars in every game, if that makes sense. It's not like when you watch the Chiefs, it's like, all right, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie. Okay, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie. We're going to just, ball out. In this one, I mean, Dean, it was devastating because I thought he was playing out of his gourd. Yeah. And I'll talk about what not having him means in the preview. But Davis was amazing. Jordan Davis. I mean, Slay, who's been, you made the big. I mean, Rodgers made a good play. Their backup, they're just all really good and well coached, and they don't bust, and they're exceptional. I mean, this is why they're still, even with the offensive ups and downs, they're still like an obvious Super Bowl contender because the defense is so good and so well coached right now and so fundamentally strong. Oh, I can't even say. I'm sorry, Nolan Smith. Oh my God, the best player in this game. That's who I. Yeah. By the way, good reminder: patience, y'all, with rookies and draft picks because these guys. Oh, buddy.
I mean, there's not very many teams that do that, and the Eagles have done it. Like, I mean, even patience over the course of this season, like with bringing along Cooper DeJean, he's not starting early in the season. And you're right, like it felt like Jordan Davis and Nolan Smith last year. It was like, this all Georgia strategy ain't really working. But like, you can develop in the NFL too, and they've shown some development, a lot of development. Nolan Smith, man, he's just
he was unreal in this game. He was just
the explosiveness, athleticism, and strength is like it jumps off the screen where you're like, who's 3?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I know. I liked him a lot in the draft, so that I'm pleased that he seems like a great guy too. You remember when he got drafted and they showed the whole Georgia room going crazy? Okay, so my woof is going to be, I was going to do the Packers team build, the infamous, we don't need an effing number 1 receiver quote from Matt LaFleur, unfortunately loomed large in this one. And like, it's unfair to say that because they lost literally everybody. Yes. And then obviously Jordan Love played very poorly in this. But I'm going to be very specific with this because, those were issues in this one. I think Jordan Love's lack of mobility is a huge problem and one that needs to be an off-season priority for him and for this team. Mm-hmm. So, because there were numerous points in this game where I was like, keep it. And he would hand it off, and the Josh Jacobs would get stuffed behind the line of scrimmage, and it was wide open for him to keep. And there were moments where he could scramble as well. The Eagles were like, he's not running. Like, so the way structurally they played him, defense has been playing them away this all year long. On the season, he has 5.5 rush yards per game, which is 27th. That's behind Aaron Rodgers, 40 years old, coming off of an Achilles. So, Domonique, I went back and I watched, because I know, he hurt his ankle, right, in the beginning of the year. I went back and watched his longer scrambles. He looks fine. Like, he's not obviously one of the, premier dual threats in the NFL. He never will be. But, like, he looks fine running.
I mean, he's Mahomes level athleticism at least. At least.
It's infuriating. So there's a lot of things Packers need to do, but I just wanted to emphasize that because it drove me crazy in this game, and it's been something that I've been annoyed by for a while, and I love watching him play.
One of my criticisms of him has been, and he frankly, like, it hasn't been a huge problem, was that he trusts his arm too much. And I meant it in that, I meant it in that.
Why I think he doesn't run.
Right. And I did. So I'm saying, like, this, this is another aspect of that.
Yes,
because I would say it as like, you know what? maybe don't try that throw. But this guy trusts his arm too much.
You got 8
And
yards,
he's going to
bud.
try that throw. But this one is like, yeah, you
Pick up
trust
the
your arm
grass.
too much. Tuck it
Yes, that's
and
such a
keep
good
it
point.
and keep it moving, which is I feel like it's something that can be learned though. Like
yeah.
It's yeah. And I mean, I guess
That's a
he
good
has a
point
lot
by
of
you. Yeah.
and understanding that when you do that, your life gets easier. You
It's
know, like the
watch every other
windows.
quarterback who's been winning in the playoffs, and there we'll get to one of them who I want to mention in this regard, who is not Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, the obvious ones. But that's such a good point. I actually think he's like, well, I can throw this falling off of 1 foot. Why would I take off and get an easy 8 yards? And
Yeah.
I do think it's because you have to also, as a quarterback, running changes the way defenses play you. I just
It's so funny because like I remember I never thought I would see the day where we had the conversation that's the exact opposite of the conversation we used to have about like athletic quarterbacks, where we were like, this guy is too eager to run.
Yeah.
He trusts his legs too much. But now we're at a point where the league has gotten smart enough and I guess the injury or the protection on quarterbacks also has changed that. The quarterbacks have gotten protected enough that it's like, you know what? You trust your arm too much. Wish this guy would tuck it.
That's so funny. He is the case study for that, I think. So, by the way, I think not this, the Pro Bowl week, I'm going to do a pod where I go through all the teams and kind of who got eliminated and do their major offseason priorities. So if you've been listening to this and you're one of the losing teams, we will return to you later. Let's take a quick break, come back and do the rest of these games. All right. I didn't realize it was AFC, NFC, the way the playoffs were scheduled this year. So I'm doing the AFC winners.
Okay.
And we're going to start with Broncos Bills here. So I get the Bills, who won. I wrote, the real winner is big boy football. The Bills looked at the Broncos and said, oh, that's cute that you got these like little fast pass rushers. We're going to put gigantic humans on the field and just run at them and knock you over. Oh my God. I mean, I'm really trying not to get to Bills Ravens before we get to Bills Ravens, but it's like watching these two games, very similar philosophies. So the Bills, first of all, sorry.
No, it was going to be Bills Ravens, but sorry.
Sure. Zip it.
Okay.
Don't rob from that game. That game I could spend like 5 hours talking about. I'm so excited for it. So the Bills' backs, by the way, actually had a higher success rate running the football than Baltimore. Baltimore beat them in EPA per play. But just to go back to the way they went about it, this has been observed a lot, but the 6 offensive lineman thing, when Alec Anderson got briefly hurt, I was like, oh no, because he's like he also is like mean the way he plays, which of course is it translates on the field. But they had 6 offensive linemen on the field over 20% of the time, second highest rate of the season. The other thing that caught my eye was their use of a fullback to run lead plays, Reggie Gilliam. So went back and looked. Since the bye, he has tripled his snaps. He has gotten double-digit snaps in almost every game as the weather has gotten colder. They were very successful running the football with him on the field. It's just remarkable, Domonique. And I also like the way they get to their runs is fantastic. They run everything. It's super diverse. It's a lot to look at. But I just think it's worth taking a moment to admire the absolute philosophical change in the way this team plays football from a mere 2 years ago, certainly 3 years ago.
So that was the one thing that stood out to me, and the points that you were making are very important, but it didn't, and I guess this is aligned with the philosophical changes. It's not a whole bunch of using Josh Allen as a runner or even as a decoy. It's like, look, man, we're gonna run this ISO at your face. It's Marshawn Lynch-esque. They're gonna keep running at your face, and like, I don't know if you want to get to my loser yet, but like it is
Well, yeah. I like your point about Josh Allen because that's very much in contrast between how the Ravens
Right.
operate with their run game. Two very dominant run games that do have large humans, but with the Bills, it feels much more about physical domination. I mean,
Right.
the offensive line was just bullying
Yeah.
Denver at the point of attack, and it's a load. And Josh Allen, it's like, okay, we'll do all this, and oh, by the way, our quarterback's an alien who's going to make 3 absolutely bad throws. And
That fourth down one. Oh my God.
shout out Ty Johnson, by the way. That's like one of the most impressive
Yes.
catch for a running back to make that catch is unreal.
Go Terps.
All right, Broncos.
Yeah, it's broadly the Broncos defense. It's the big wolf because the argument for the Broncos was their defense. And we saw what the Eagles defense was forced to do and able to do throughout the course of this game. And if the Broncos were going to have any chance, their defense was going to have to play well. They got exposed. They got embarrassed. They got formationed to death.
Yes.
That's after they got
unbalanced formations where they were
that was after they got punched in the face or while also getting punched in the face. It was a rough go for the Broncos defense. And yeah, they ran more zone than I expected them to run. And to be fair, like I thought their coverage and man, like it seemed to me that Josh was holding onto the ball for some plays because the coverage was tight and they don't have like a tremendous, like this is why they went and got Stephon Diggs, like, and why they went and got Amari Cooper is like they don't have a guy that you're like scared to put in man coverage. And I felt like the Broncos were fine in man coverage, but this also exposed them because we're like, you know what? We play great tight man coverage and our pass rush gets home. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Not today. It won't. And so it just felt like they got a couple of sacks, but they never felt like they were in control. It felt like when they had success, it was because the refs didn't throw a flag or because the Bills messed up. They just, even though they didn't get much offensive support, I expected better out of a defense that I thought was very good.
So when I talk about the Broncos offseason, obviously we're going to get into getting playmakers for Bo Nix, the run game, but defensively watching them, is it just about, the linebacker position is probably the thing that jumps out the most. Is there anything you think they should prioritize?
Yeah, I think the size up front is one thing. I think that versatility. Are you playing this coverage because this is all you can play or because it's what you want to play? And so the best coverage in any sport, frankly, is man to man. Like there's no way to complicate that. But the problem is, as it is true in most sports, it's really hard. Yeah. Like it's so hard. Even the best guys you play, man, you ever watch one-on-ones at a practice, like the receivers are going to win more than the cornerbacks. And so even if you have a great cornerback, you can't cover people man to man the whole game. So they need some versatility. And that's to compare them to the best defense, the Eagles, that's the thing the Eagles do. Like they're capable. Quinn is capable of playing man. Slay is capable, but they also understand the cover 4 rules and understand how to adjust. And I think that's the hard thing about it. Man is straightforward. Cover this dude everywhere. Cover 4 is like, well, if we get 2-by-1, then this happens. We get 3-by-1 and number 2 goes flat, then this happens. If we get motion over here, we got to roll the coverage. And so these things require a lot of practice and understanding or spending the time this offseason fully implementing those sorts of coverages, which I'm sure the guys know it, but you got to practice it and understand it. I think that's a huge thing.
The deep ball to Curtis Samuel out of the 4-by-1 comes to mind where they got Surtain with the motion and
sorry, never mind.
No. It's a good point. I do think like Denver, we'll get, like I said, I'm gonna do that pod, but obviously it's a much better season than anyone anticipated. And I think that there's like the things that you got to do are pretty obvious. So, and you're going to get out of the Wilson contract soon. So a lot to be optimistic about if you're a Broncos fan. All right. Steelers, Ravens. I'm going first. The Ravens obviously won by quite a bit. My winner is Lamar Jackson's mother. Vindicated yet again. For those who missed it, Lamar Jackson's mother famously, as he related, told him he had to run more after a loss. So in this game, Domonique, Lamar Jackson had the most carries in the first quarter of his entire season, second most of his entire career. What I loved about this the Steelers clearly came in thinking, all right, we're going to, going back and rewatching that first drive, we're going to crash Henry with our end, and then we're either going to have one of our linebackers scrape over or Minka is going to fill, right? Problem was, Lamar just kept beating the second man because he's so unbelievably fast. So then they start playing Lamar, and then Henry gets loose, and you really saw, like, this was just pure uncut option football. Like, I just, every time this, like, the Steelers just kept being wrong because of the numbers advantage. It's just
no baking soda in this. We don't need nothing. It was pure. It was not complicated. It was not sophisticated, which is the best thing about this offense all season, is that it has been a bit sophisticated at times. And they took whatever the whole offseason where we said, y'all, they run the ball out. They run the ball out. They was like, looky here. We're going to make sure. And to your point, that's the thing about option football, is when you play it perfectly, you have a guy for a guy.
Yeah.
And when you have a guy for a guy, if our guys, one happens to be 250 damn near and apparently run 21 miles an hour, yeah, you don't got too many guys on the other side that are going to be able to do anything with that. Best case scenario, if it's one-on-one, is he falls forward for 4 yards. Like, that's best case scenario, unless Cam Hayward is the one who grabs him or something like that. And then the other alternative is one of the best athletes in the league in space with one of your guys who, like, even if he's a great athlete, it's again back to the one-on-one rules. It's like best case scenario is I slow him down and get some help and we get him for 5 or 6 yards, which is that counts as a win for our teams. As long as Lamar doesn't get hurt, like, we just won this rep.
It was not particularly complicated, although they once again ruined their lives with motion. Yeah. And the one where they had Henry get the direct snap and Lamar went across in motion was very unkind. That was very, very mean.
Oh yeah, I did a Sports Center hit this at 7:00 this morning, and I was like, clip this play for me because I want to demonstrate to you guys how many people ran with Lamar.
So many.
I was like, 3 or 4 guys are like, at least 2 ran with him. 2 other guys are like conscious of him, are being drawn by his gravity. And then that ends up with Derrick Henry putting his hand in Mika Fitzpatrick's face and throwing him to the ground. And the thing that jumped out to me about that I talked about on the Sports Center hit was, like, not only did that play work, that play ruins the Bills' week of preparation.
Oh, yes. And by the way, this is what
ruined it.
This is one thing I love about, again, Lamar getting these carries early, is the Steelers were like, well, it just completely screwed up their eyes. One thing I want to also emphasize, just before we move on, is just in terms of, like, again, we're talking about, like, this is option football, right? This is the run stuff you see, like, at high school, right? But the execution and attention to details of the Ravens' run game, the individual blocking efforts, like, the offensive line is very good. The way their tight ends were blocking in this one, obviously Ricard, and then Lamar's ball handling. I watched some of the runs from the perspective of the Steelers defense, and he is so late on these like, he is really, really tricky back there handing off the football. And I'm watching that, like, just, I'm thinking, okay, put myself in the mind of, like, Patrick Queen watching the mesh point here. I don't know what's going to happen until the very last second, and it is a mind F.
How, this is a broader statement, but just, like, we use the word smart or intelligence in a bunch of different ways. And one thing that I know is a like expression of some sort of brain power is, like, how quickly you can pick up things and implement them. And the zone playing and the way that he's playing, like, that seems like something that with an athletic quarterback he's been doing a long time. So, like, that's not unique. But we've seen him develop this way of managing the pocket. So, like, they need to get a score towards the end of the first half. And it's like they subbed in a different quarterback. It's like the guy who you get in the zone read package that threatens the defense should not also be the guy that can lead a 2-minute drill,
Oof,
or I guess
Bateman for the touchdown at the end of
yeah,
that 13
yeah, like the same guy should not be the one that can hold the backside safety and rip a pass in a tiny window in the back of the end zone. It's like, if this guy is our quarterback, all right, we got him in the red zone. All right, we put more guys in the box. No, you can't do it. He can do everything.
I kind of hate that him and Allen are playing in the divisional round in a way, because I mean, just these two.
And then he doesn't turn the ball over. Like, he doesn't throw interceptions.
Neither
like
of them do now.
This ain't supposed to be the same guy who does all these things.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Josh Allen too.
Steelers, you're on Woofs here.
My Wolf.
Charles Barkley, is it time to have a conversation?
Yeah, it is time to have a conversation, Mike Tomlin. Yeah, my Wolf is Mike Tomlin. And I'm going to be specific about the Wolf. I think a lot of the conversations about Mike Tomlin is just general, like, oh, Tom ran out and his message don't work, or sometimes you just need a change. It's like, I'm not getting into any of that sort of stuff just yet. But specifically, again, 4th downs, man. What are you doing? What are you doing on 4th down?
Yeah, there was one early in the game that was
4th and inches.
Yeah, that was, and then Harbaugh went for it in his own territory, up 2 scores, 2 tries.
Yeah, and like, I get it. So it's unfair to say. I mean, I guess the Bowles conversation, we said you got to update your software when you have new variables, and it's like, all right, we don't have a great offense, so maybe we should be less aggressive on 4th downs. But you're going against a team that you can't stop. Right. And it's 4th and inches. Again, like,
know your opponent. Know your opponent.
And know yourself.
Yeah. Problem with Tomlin is, unlike Bowles, neither side of the ball was very good, right? So, although weirdly Russell Wilson had 2 drives where he was awesome, so I do want to give him a shout out for that. Okay. Steelers quarterback conversation is another day, but as far as Tomlin goes, I've been asked about this a lot. I'm sure you have on every show. What should they do? Should they keep him? Whatever. I guess my feeling is this. I think he is a great coach for a team with a quarterback. Any team with even a young quarterback, honestly, as long as they're good, any team with a quarterback should be bending over backwards to have Mike Tomlin. However, a team that doesn't have a quarterback and has to find one, that's where I think it is worth questioning. And obviously that's who the Steelers are, not just because of what you're talking about there, but which is that is separate from the quarterback, but he has not shown an ability to coach a successor. And I know he's not the GM, but he's obviously very involved in these things. So I think, like, if you're a Steelers fan and you're thinking, okay, well, first of all, if you go into next year with Russell Wilson, it's going to be the same. I don't think I would feel good about him with that question hanging over the franchise. And the reality is, Domonique, if he leaves, he's probably going to have a ton of success somewhere else, and people are going to on you, but it's not, that won't be fair.
Yeah. The thing I have a hard time with in this conversation is I hinted towards it a second ago, but why? And he's a great coach, period. We all agree with that. And your point is, I'll accept this fact, is he's a great coach who needs a quarterback. Who isn't?
Yeah.
And so, like, if you have a great coach, moving on from him because you don't have a quarterback, to me, is like,
it's beyond the quarterback, though. I mean, his choices of offensive coordinators, hanging on to the offensive coordinators.
I get it. I get all the reasons why and the 4th down decisions on top of it, but there's a big enough sample size to say that, like, the offense has been bad over this stretch for a long enough time under the top dog that you had something to do with it. You got to pay for it. Like, that's the argument you're making. That's reasonable. The tough thing I have there is, like, and this is about personality more than anything, I guess, is like, I try to genuinely put myself in the shoes, and I know that I'm risk averse. I got a great coach here. I'm going to keep, like, letting my great coach be the great coach unless there's some reason he's not being a great coach. And I think I'm just going to hope I get lucky with an OC or a quarterback, I guess.
I think that's completely fair. And I don't think, like, even Arthur Smith deserves that much blame for this season. Here's what would happen. If the Steelers let Tomlin leave, he has no trade clause, so he would have to go, whatever. it would be very similar in my mind to the Cowboys not signing Derrick Henry, in that he's probably going to go somewhere and have a ton of success, and everyone's just going to on you.
But it wouldn't work for you either.
If he had stayed, it's not like it would. Like, for example, if he was to go to, I don't know, Chicago, whatever,
right?
For example, Dallas. It's an unfair comparison that will spring out of it, but I don't think they are prepared to deal with the blowback from that. I think your point is correct. You just roll the dice again on the quarterback. If he pushes to bring back Wilson, then I might be out. And that's not even saying Russell Wilson played particularly poorly. I actually think, like, in this game, he wasn't even that bad. We saw significantly worse quarterback performances this season. But you know where your ceiling is as a team. Yeah. And I would be very like, oh, okay, man, come on.
And I guess that I could understand that as a decision. But you also have to hold space for not only him going somewhere else and likely succeeding, because he would have his choice of jobs.
Yeah.
Right? So he'd have his choice. It'd be a bidding war. He'd pick where he wanted to go. He'd pick the best situation, and we're going to assume that he'd have success. You also have to say the other side of this equation. You're not going to be good, and you're likely to get a head coach who stinks, because most of them stink. And so you're going to go watch him have success elsewhere, and maybe you have to go through this stink phase in order to find the right head coach and find the right future. That's fine. But not only is he going to be hoisting the Lombardi somewhere else, you are going to stink for at least a 2-3 year stretch.
Unless you land on quarterback, which is what this always comes down to, right? So I think the decision has to be a big factor in the decision has to be, do you believe he is capable of identifying and nurturing that guy?
Do you believe he's the reason why your offense has been, like, do you believe that your offense can get better while he's here?
That's the question, the core question. And I don't know the answer, Domonique. I don't know the answer to that for Pittsburgh.
And also, like, this defense's best days are behind it, I guess. The players that are on it, the best days. So, like, they are headed into a stretch where no matter who the coach is, I would think that they're headed into, it's no longer going to be 500 Mike Tomlin. Like, maybe he'll masterfully make this team 500. But I mean, they do draft well historically, so maybe I'm wrong, but
no, it's just
these guys is old, man.
Do you think? Yeah, I think this was like the Wilson Fields thing. It's a great illustration, though, of why you might have an issue with him, which is to say, when that happened immediately, I was like, oh, this was obviously the right decision. But you also saw the case for rolling with him was playing the variance and seeing what you get. Mike Tomlin will not ever play the variance,
right?
And that might be a problem. All right, Chargers Texans. Let's improve the mood here. Wrap this up. I got the Texans. Ooh, defense. Ho ho ho, buddy. Yeah. I know everybody just wants to say Justin Herbert sucks and he's the worst quarterback on earth, and everyone who's ever defended him is. And we're gonna get to his obviously had a very bad game, but defense plays too, and they were unbelievable, Domonique. I didn't even know who to pick. I was like, Lenny Jr. I mean, the pass rush was incredible. I went with the corners because I just thought Stingley Jr. and Lassiter. Kamari Lassiter. We got to talk about this Texans draft class at some point with Bullock and Lassiter. But, I mean, good Lord, those guys were strapping him up. I just – one of the best – against a very limited offense that was exposed, but one of the best defensive performances of the entire season. So this was from, I think this was NGS. Stingley Jr. and Lassiter were targeted 15 times in this game. 7 were tight windows and 3 were interceptions.
That's incredible. Yeah, that was. I'm glad you picked the secondary. There's plenty of things to highlight there, but I mean, not the secondary, the corner specifically. It's the hardest job physically, I think, in football. Maybe there's some other things that are mentally tough, but those boys were locked all the way in. And the team was, I mean, the offense was trying to lose the game, at least the first half. They're like, we're going to blow this, do the best we can to blow this game. And the defense just wouldn't let them do it, down to the blocked extra point return for 2 points. Like, that was It's incredible.
I mean, we're going to obviously preview Texans Chiefs in greater detail, but any chance to me of a upset there starts with what we're talking about, the defense pressures. You got, I mean, D'Amico Ryans was just some of the pressures he was dialing, which has always been something he's really good at.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a special performance. And I think it was DJ Bienemy who covers the Texans for us who pointed this out. But like here, let me pull up the exact stat he has, because this is really worth taking a second to know when we talk about it. I think it was kind of lost. I mean, the Texans defense finished with that, well, not finished, but they had that performance obviously against the Ravens on Christmas, and that really, but DJ pointed this out. When you look at Justin Herbert, Josh Allen, Tua Tagovailoa, Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff's game log this season, all the games against the Texans stand out. All arguably had the worst games of their career against the Texans. Combined 12 interceptions in those games. Granted, like 6 of those were against Goff, but point is, this is a very, very good defense. All right, Justin Herbert now.
Yeah. I mean, my loser is Justin Herbert, or my wolf, excuse me, Justin Herbert. There's no way around it. There's no cutesy way to get to the loser this game. He walked away with a second kind of playoff embarrassment, and I was at the Ravens game on. I took my son, and we were on the sideline and stuff. So I was seeing the highlights, or seeing the game played on because they like play it in the stadium on the Jumbotron. So I went back and watched it afterwards, but I'm in the stadium, and every time I look up, there's an interception. And I'm like, is this a replay? And I think the ones that stuck in my head were the ones that felt like they weren't his fault. So I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's a whatever. It wasn't on him, blah, blah, blah. Then I go back and watch the game. It was like, there's nothing. There's very few. Like, there were some big arm throws that were like, damn, I see why people get excited. But there were just bad decisions, overthrow passes. It's just like, this
he melted down.
Yeah, that's a more concise way. You must be a writer.
I think he kind of, I forgot who I said this to at the game, but it kind of felt like when all the season long, when people were talking about CJ Stroud and like what was happening to him, and I want to hit on him very briefly. What I would say is, at first it was the pressure, and then the quarterback made it worse. That's how I felt watching the Chargers in this one. Because at first I was like, oh no, because he was just, and then bad decisions, bad throws, almost like flowed out of that, as well as, I mean, other than Ladd McConkey, they don't. And I'm not making excuse for her. I'm just trying to explain what I think happened here. I feel like I'm so defensive about him just because people are like so bloodthirsty for him all the time. He was awful in this game. The thing that really frustrated me in contrast with Stroud, and I know I kind of went on a rant about this with Love, run with the try not to cuss as much.
Football.
How do you not have a single carry? And I say that not just because I was like, they should carry the football in this game, and I was obviously proven wrong because he didn't carry the football at all. But like, and I think the Texans did a decent job of hemming him in a few times here. But the thing I liked about Herbert this season, and something that I've been a little bit annoyed by in the past, is he was a playmaker. He had the most carries of the year, and he just was like, no, I'm gonna find my guy. I'm gonna beat the rush. And it's like, your guy's not that. You gotta take over.
You don't got a guy, first of all.
Meanwhile, on the other side, Stroud, who we do not think of as a dual threat quarterback, ran for over 40 yards in this game, Domonique, and that was big for this Texans offense.
Man,
my voice is like going up 5 octaves. I'm so
good for CJ Stroud for winning, but and good for you for finding some positive in how he played. But I mean, CJ Stroud had some good plays, but I don't feel great about him going forward. But we're talking about Herbert right now. You're right. Like, find something. You have things, use them. Try to find anything that you can do, and trusting your arm to throw back across the field and rip into every window. And that's the problem. Is like it works sometimes, and that I think leads some quarterbacks to think that that's what they should do. It's like, it works sometimes. Do it when you have to. And there's the difference between, and I guess this is maybe I'm playing the result some, because I am encouraged when quarterbacks scramble and then flatten out to find the big play, but because the 20-yard gain or the 25-yard gain is much better than the 5 that you could get. But I think it's also about situation. And that's a lot of calculus to do in that moment, is like, we need something. And it's about who you're throwing to. Like, I remember that
Fourth and short, your season is on the line, and you're throwing at Quentin frickin' Johnston.
Right.
That's, by the way, on everyone. Roman.
Yeah. Great.
The clock just hit midnight. Sorry, that was unnecessarily dramatic.
I liked it.
That hire came with such an obvious expiration date, and it's already here, bud. It's already here. I'm sorry. I'm being unnecessarily mean, but I'm just getting worked up.
You're not being mean. You're being honest. And all 13 of the Chargers fans agree with you. They agree.
Oh, wow. What a shocker. He's short of the sticks and having trouble catching the football. Who could have foreseen this? But yeah, Herbert was bad. The whole thing was bad. Offensive line, the Texans saw obvious weakness in the interior and has been an issue all year. It's supposed to be the strength of this team. There's a lot of problems. Yeah, so we'll talk about what I mean, everyone knows what they need. It starts with T and ends with Higgins, but there's other things they need too. We will get to, obviously, the Texans in the preview. But Domonique, that's it for today. Sorry, I got so unnecessarily upset at the end.
It's not unnecessary.
Just get so mad. Jordan Love. You're right. I'm just screaming at these guys. Maybe Herbert has the same thing as Love, where he's like, I have an arm touched by God. Of course I can make this whole shot with like 8 guys in my face. I will be back later the week with Bill Barnwell, the great Bill Barnwell, to preview the divisional round. Hopefully a better slate of games. Domonique, is your live show tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay.
Wednesday.
I heard it's sold out, so sorry. If you're listening to this, you snooze, you lose. Yeah. And then I guess, I assume I might be on his show later in the week, the Domonique Foxworth show. Check it out wherever you get pods. Check it out on YouTube. You can also check this out on YouTube. Otherwise, I'll be back Thursday. Wow.